Hello, students of Macro. I want to start out just by hoping that everyone is doing well, that everybody's family is healthy, and that we're all maintaining proper social distancing. I know there's been a lot of questions about the AP exam, about the course, about school, about society, about life in general. I'm going to try to, of course, just answer a few of those today, more specifically, questions about the AP exam itself. So I did post on the Google Classroom some information from College Board about the exam and about some of the details of that exam. But I just wanted to highlight a few of those things for you. And if you do have further questions, you can always contact me through Google Classroom and I'll try to answer those for you. So let's just go through some of the questions that I've had and I've heard from students so far, either through Snapgram, Twitter, or the Insta chat. So first of all, I have a question here from Juliana I, and her question is, what does AP stand for? Now, it's probably a little late in the year to be answering that question, but the answer is Advanced Placement. Now, when will the AP exam be is sent to us from Mary H. If you don't already know, you should mark this on your calendar. The date will be Thursday, the 21st of March. So we still have a good amount of time to prepare, and hopefully you're using that time well. Now, another important question comes to us from Jack V, and that question is, do I have to wake up early for the AP exam? And the answer, Jack, unfortunately, is yes. It will be at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so hopefully you'll be up by then. All right, next up, a question I know a lot of you have probably been thinking about, perhaps asking your parents as well. And it's a question we've been discussing as well amongst ourselves, both as teachers as well as administrators. And that question is, do students have to take the AP exam? And the answer to that question is yes. In order to receive credit for this class, which of course you need in order to graduate, then you must also take the AP exam. Now, the consensus at the moment is that that's probably to your advantage, because with the modified test format, which I'll address here in a second, it's probably going to be one of the easier AP exams that you'll ever take. Now, how that's going to affect scoring, the national average, the mean, etc., that's kind of up in the air for the moment. But I think given the opportunity to take a 45-minute as opposed to a 2-hour and 10-minute AP exam, is something that you guys should probably want to take advantage of. So, in any event, let's move on to the exam itself and a little bit about the formatting of the test. So as I mentioned, it's a 45-minute exam. Again, much shorter than your traditional AP exam. And unlike the traditional AP exam, there will be no multiple choice section on the test. It will only be free response questions. And very much like the free response questions we've been doing. The only big difference between the free response questions we've been doing and what you'll see on the exam in May is the fact that you will not be drawing graphs. Again, there will be no graphs on this exam. However, you may need to, on scrap paper, which you may use, draw graphs, which will allow you then to determine certain answers about what's going to happen to price level, what's going to happen to output. Those types of things you could, some of you at least, envision that in your own head, but certainly graphing it will make it a little bit clearer for you. But again, presenting the graphs, uploading those graphs as part of your answer officially for the questions is not required. So more specifics, I just want to read specifically from the College Board outline. It reads, students will have 25 minutes to read and respond to question 1, and then 5 minutes to upload their response. After uploading the response to question 1, students will have 15 minutes to respond to question 2, with 5 additional minutes to upload the response to question 2. So you have to work on each portion separately. First, question 1, which will actually be made up of 2 separate questions. And then question 2, which in reality is the third question, but leave it to College Board to make this unnecessarily complicated. But in any event, you'll have to answer the first portion, upload it, and then answer the second portion. and upload it. Okay. Another very important question comes to us from a student, Luke C. And his question is Aunt Jemima real syrup? And of course, as anyone knows who's actually eaten before, the answer to that is no, it is not. Anyway, moving on to more important matters. So this question comes to us from Catherine S. And Catherine would like to know what will actually be covered on the exam, what topics. So essentially everything that we had covered prior to ending school, or at least school together as we knew it, up until free trade and the final portion, which will not be on the exam. So what we call units 1 through 5 will be on the exam. That's basic economic concepts, supply, demand, scarcity, then how do we measure the economy, things like GDP, inflation, etc. Also, of course, then aggregate demand, aggregate supply, all of that, and then fiscal policy, monetary policy, how do we affect the economy, what are the short-run effects of that, what are the long-run effects of that. So all of that, of course, will be on the exam. Again, the only portion that will not be tested is the portion on the so-called international trade and finance. That's Unit 6 of the curriculum. So that includes things like exchange rates and also trade, free trade, trade barriers, etc., and the impact of those. So again, that's not on the test, but of course it would certainly be in your best interest, particularly if you intend to study economics in the future, to actually familiarize yourself with those topics. So another question comes to us from Mary F. And Mary asks, in line with what I was just saying, can I still continue reading the textbook on further modules about things like international trade? And of course, Mary, and to all of the other ambitious students out there, the answer is an unequivocal yes. If you do plan to study economics in college, if you plan to use this as a stepping stone to higher level economics courses, which you may be allowed to do depending on your university, then you should certainly continue to forge ahead with the material. Another very probing question comes to us from a Christian S. And that question is All American Burger still open? Now, for those of you who have taken Long Island history or played soccer, at least on the girls' side, you'll know that All American is a very well-established burger joint here in Massapequa, and unfortunately, Christian, it is not open at the moment, so we're all looking forward to that, of course. Another question I want to just return to, because again, it's come up a few times, is will there be graphing on the test? And I think probably more for practical reasons than anything else, the necessity of the limitations imposed by the technology of graphing and then uploading those graphs. I think it's a lot easier for College Board to grade your exams if they simply rely on you just providing worded answers as opposed to graphs. So there will be no graphing. But as I mentioned before, drawing graphs, having scrap paper nearby is not only allowed, it is encouraged, because that will give you an opportunity to visualize what is happening to the macroeconomy, what's happening, for example, to aggregate demand. So that a question might deal with, perhaps something like what's happening to our economy today. There's both a drop in aggregate demand and also a drop in aggregate supply. What would the effect of that be on the price level? What would the effect of that be on GDP? What would the effect of that be on unemployment? Certainly graphing that would make it easier for you to answer those questions correctly. So again, scrap paper, graphing are not only allowed, but certainly encouraged. Now, speaking of drawing, uploading grades, another important question to address is the formatting, the uploading of your answers. So as I said, they would much prefer that you type your answers. I think it makes it a lot easier for the graders to access your answers and then to also assess them for plagiarism, which I'll address shortly. But should you need to, should you want to, you can in fact put your answers on a piece of paper, and you can then take a photo of that paper, and then you can submit the photograph to College Board as well. So that is an option. Again, you can write your answer out on paper if you're not as comfortable doing it on the computer, and then you can upload that image, and that will serve as your official answer with College Board. So whatever option you prefer, I would encourage you to, at least beforehand, make sure that all your technology is familiar to you, that you've had a chance to kind of run through some practice uploads. You certainly don't want it to be the first time that you're trying to upload a photo from your, let's say, your iPhone up to the College Board website. So make sure that you dabble. And then College Board has said also that as we get closer to the test, they will actually provide us with some opportunities to practice the modalities and the ability to upload information. So hopefully they will follow through on that. So another question that has arisen, it came up a lot during the year, and it's actually, the answer to the question is now changed, that it has to do with calculators. So Marissa M. wants to know, does she have to take off her shoes in order to do her calculations, or is she allowed to use a calculator? So good news for her, and for a lot of you probably, this year, as an exception, you will be allowed to use a calculator, a so-called 4-function calculator. So that's a basic, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division calculator, and the types of devices that are approved or not approved. If it's a complicated graphing calculator, obviously that would not be approved. So in any event, that will be of help to some of you, although I doubt, knowing that they're going to use any questions that would require an inordinate amount of calculation anyhow. But again, you never know. Another question that comes to us is, let's see, I just the graphing. So another question that probably every single student has considered, which is the question of what constitutes cheating on the exam. Can I cheat? Well, obviously College Board's answer to that is an unequivocal no. They are aware, however, of course, that you will be essentially taking an open book or an open note test while you do this. So that's going to prove a little challenging to create questions that require you to demonstrate an adequate knowledge of AP Macro with notes in front of you, with summary charts in front of you. Personally, I'm not really sure how they're going to actually do that, but there are some restrictions. So I want to just read specifically what College Board has written about this. So they write, students are not permitted to incorporate work which is not their own, and students are not permitted to provide or receive aid in any kind from anyone, in person, online, or mobile. During the exam, students may not, A, communicate with any other person during the exam through any means, including online, in person, by mobile or other device. B, crowdsource support from group messages, online forums, and social media. And I would suspect that they're probably going to be monitoring certain sites, social media. They might just do generic searches about AP Macro, etc., just to see if they can come across. One thing the College Board is very good at is trying to detect and deter cheating. So again, you really want to try to do this with your own knowledge. Obviously, you're allowed to use any notes that you might have, but you really want to try to do this on your own. And lastly, C, they say you may not incorporate the work of another person or technological service into your own exam response, including language translation. So again, how does that square with this idea of taking an open note or an open book test, that you can't include another person's work? I'm not really sure how those two things can exist simultaneously, but I guess we will see. So I just want to finish up with a couple of very important questions. This one comes from a student calling herself B Rock, and the question is, was Joe Exotic framed? Now, I'm not sure about your opinion on this, but mine is certainly that he was. And then finally, the last question comes to us from a Claire M, and she wants to know, where is Carol's husband? And if you ask me, I'd say probably you want to dig behind the barn. That's what I would suggest. So having covered all that important information, I just want to wish everybody good health. And again, please make sure that you're taking the appropriate steps to keep yourselves, keep your families, keep the people around you healthy. Remember, it's not just about you. You guys are all young. Fortunately, this virus has spared young people for the most part, although not exclusively. There have been some cases of young people falling ill. It's about the people around you. It's about us together. So I hope everybody's well, and I will speak to you guys soon. All right, have a good one.